Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella, along with one of America's greatest entrepreneurs, the co-founder of Amway, best-selling book author, and the owner of the Orlando Magic, Richard DeVos. Richard has a great new book out. It's called 10 Powerful Phrases for Positive People. Welcome to Newsmax, Richard.
My pleasure to be here.
Before we get into your book, let's talk about your team a bit. Now, you mentioned in your book that you're the chief cheerleader for the Magic. What are you doing to deliver your positive message to the players?
Well, I have a wonderful relationship with my players. First of all, I have them all over to my house for dinner at the beginning of the season, so we develop a relationship with them. I have them over there so they'll know who the owner is. I'm always amazed at how many guys in the NBA have never met an owner, much less ever been to an owner's house. Oftentimes the owners don't interface with the players, and they may have good reason for that. But I happen to, because we bought the team so that we would be able to be a positive force for them, so that they in turn would be a positive force to the young people everywhere. So it's an extension of our concern always to try and help people become positive and be life enrichers or lift up other people.
How much of an advantage is that to the players to have somebody with a positive outlook as opposed to some of the owners where all you hear is negative stuff coming out?
Well, I hope it's a lot of difference. I know in the NBA, the players always say, this is the best franchise to work for. They may not always be the best team to play on, but they say it's the best franchise because of the way we treat people and because of the relationship we have with the players. They feel at home. One of them told me the other day, he said, I've never had a family. And it was a young guy from the Caribbean who, his father was non-existent. His mother died when he was 2 years old. He said, I had two kids with me at Christmas, and he said, I've never had a Christmas tree. I've never had a family at Christmas. And he said, tell me how it is in your home. And he said, when I got here, I sort of felt like I had a family here. Well, I went over and hugged him, and I said, you have family here. This is your home.
Your book is such an easy read, so inspirational. What do you think the positive messages you write about in the book can do for people who are victims of this current economic crisis?
First of all, my book has a chapter on you can do it. I grew up in that economic crisis. My father was unemployed for 3 years. We had to move in and live in the attic of my grandparents for all those years. I remember when they said at one time when a kid came to the door selling magazines that they didn't have 10 cents to buy a magazine. So I grew up in that atmosphere. But you see, my father, despite all that, always said to me, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it, you're going to be great, you're going to do good things. And he had developed a positive attitude, even though he himself had not had great success or achievement. He had a good job, and he was a sales guy, and he represented General Electric for many years. So it wasn't like in his later years he didn't do okay, but he never achieved what he had hoped. And so he was always my cheerleader.
What would you say to somebody who today, because of this crisis, lost all their money, lost their job perhaps? What would you say to them?
I say, you're going to do just fine. The Lord has a way of working in our lives. Sometimes he brings us down low to bring new values back to our life. There's higher value systems, and out of that will come a new job for you, a better job for you, a job more fitting for you. Because I've had to lay off people in our company. We have thousands of employees. You can't keep them all going all the time. And many of them, I talked to them afterwards, have said, I got a better job. I don't make as much money, but it suits me better. We started selling Amway to start a business. If you can't get a job, then get an Amway or start a business of your own. Think about things you can do. There's always things you can do, even if it's in the realm of public service right now.
Something, Richard, struck my attention when I was reading your index to your book, and it says, you're referring to the Great Depression era, but you say at a time in our history when people were beginning to doubt democracy and see socialism as the future. Do you think that could be applicable to what's happening today?
I think the book is perfect from a timing standpoint. Don't forget, when we started Amway, which is exactly 50 years ago now, it was when Castro took over Cuba. It was when Russia was on the move around the world. They were establishing bases in Africa and other parts of the world. And the word is that capitalism and socialism. Socialism was a wave of the future, if not communism. That was the way to get it done. And so that was the conversation of the day. And that's when we started Amway. And you know, that's why it has this name. We decided to become a champion for free enterprise and extol its virtues when the world was beginning to question it. And that's why we gave the name. That's why we talk about it all the time. And it was perfect. The timing was just right. And this book is appropriate for this time.
You write in your book about how difficult it was for you to get a heart transplant at the age of 71. You couldn't find a heart surgeon willing to do it, and you kept trying. You didn't give up. Can you talk about that a bit?
Well, you know, it shows what happens in life. You have to take a lot of no's to get a yes sometime. Every heart transplant center in the United States turned us down. My personal surgeon called every one of the centers, and they all said, he's too old, he's too high risk, we're not going to take him. But he said, I have one doctor in England, he said he would see you. He won't promise to give you a heart, he won't promise to take you as a patient, but he said he'd see you. That's all we needed. With my mental fix, my wife and I leased an apartment in London for many months because he said, we're going to go to London to get a heart. Now, all we had was that he would see us. He had all the records on us, and he still wouldn't say he would absolutely do it. So we went to London, but we moved in. We packed up for the long stay, even though we might have come home the next day. But when we got there, he started talking to us, and my son had been there, and they told my son it would take 4 days of testing and evaluating, and then we would determine whether we should see if we could get him a heart. I talked to him for 2 hours, and he says, okay, I'll see what I can do. Now, all that other testing stuff that he had talked about didn't seem to matter because he understood the significance of the attitude and the value that the person had. Because we know today that when you have transplants, the people who have family, who have support mechanism, and who have faith always do much better in this process, as they do in most medical procedures. And he said, then I know you can go through this, and you can take what you have to take to survive this, because you have an attitude, you have values. And his questions were, why do you want to live? I said, well, I got grandchildren. I want to watch them graduate, and I got this, and I got this business, and I'd like to see my children, see how well they do with it. No, they said, okay, I'm going to see if I can get your heart. It was all based that I knew who I was and that I had reasons to live.
So you believed in him, and you made him believe in you, basically,
well,
essentially.
I didn't have any choice. But you see, that's the way it is in life. You get a lot of things that you can't do, or you get fired, you get terminated, you're told you can't do it. But you only need one door to open. And now it's up to you to show your worth and what you can do. And a lot of the people who are unemployed today are going to find a lower level job they're going to enter, but because they have value and worth, are going to rise very quickly. Because as we recover, there's going to be great need for these people. And they're going to find themselves in a new and better position, and they're going to do just fine.
You apparently a deeply religious man. How important was and is your faith to your success?
I think the faith is the foundation of my success, because you work on the faith basis that you believe that God's got his hand on you, but as our business moved forward, you realize God has his hand on the whole business, and that he brought people to us who were like-minded people, or who became like-minded people. Because to do individual selling, you have to have faith in yourself. And that comes from where? That comes from God. Hope, family, and rewards for what you do. But it starts with faith.
You're also a member of the greatest generation, a World War II veteran. We have men and women today in harm's way in Iraq and Afghanistan. What words of encouragement could you offer to them?
Our faith at that time and our knowledge that Hitler was determined to take over our country. There was no question about where he was heading. He had taken Europe. He wanted England, and we were in line. And so everybody who was in the military knew in those days, we either won or we lost everything. So you see, everybody was committed in a whole different way than they were as if it's this little foreign action we were involved in. But they must understand that that same threat exists today. That message never got translated properly. The fear and the threat of what was coming if we did not stop the aggression that had been delivered upon us. The attack on New York was not much different than the attack on Pearl Harbor, in that they were both attacks by a foreign enemy upon our country. But all people say, well, that's just a little foreign thing, this will go away. Instead of saying, this is a real threat to this country. And if you don't determine and stop this, then this whole country will someday be in the hands of the enemy. So I would say to the guys over there and the gals over there, praise the Lord. You're doing a work that a lot of people just don't appreciate and understand the significance of yet.
Richard DeVos, thank you so much for spending time with us at Newsmax. This book is really terrific. We hope you pick up a copy and read it. And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.